You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before FIRE. Using FIRE and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to FIRE instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a FIRE movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this. Hello there and welcome back to another episode. So this is a continuation of the previous episode on how to do geographic arbitrage. So on today's show, I'll be taking you through steps 3 to 5. But just to quickly recap the first 2 steps, number 1 is knowing your why and what are your main reasons for making the move, and number 2 was doing the homework. And I talked through the important topics and the super important topics to consider. So feel free to have a listen to that one if you missed it. Alright, so let's get into steps 3 to 5. Okay, so step number 3 on the list is to run the numbers. Or as Christy at Millennial Revolution says, let's math that ish up. Anyway, you need to do all the calculations to see if it works for you and your family. That's if you have a spouse and kids. If you've got a few different places in mind, this is a good time to narrow it down. Okay, so maybe you can calculate 2 to 3 different scenarios if you do have multiple locations. So for this part, I suggest you list out all potential expenses, that's your one-off ones and your regular expenses, and of course list out all your potential income streams and see if it's sustainable for you. Essentially, you need to assess if this is a viable option financially. Ideally, you'd like to see your forecast savings rate increase in your new place. Okay, so let's go to the next step, which is my favourite, the testing and experimenting phase. So if your possible locations pass the maths test and also the excitement test, i.e. you feel excited about the new places, I highly suggest you visit those potential locations first before making the big move. Ideally, this would be staying for a few weeks or even months to get to know the area. But if you can only muster a few days, that's fine, it's better than nothing. Another thing you can do is try speaking to people who've also relocated there to get their thoughts. At the end of the day, you want to get a feel for what it's really like living there. Okay, so once you've done your visit tests, you need to make a decision to go or not to go. That sounds like some Shakespeare lines. By the way, some places might look good on paper, but fall short on the visit tests. But that's all good, that's fine, that's what the tests are for. You just have to go back to the drawing board and find other places to experiment. Okay, so one important thing to remember is that a place might not tick all your boxes, but if all your non-negotiables are ticked, and overall the move helps you towards your goals, and you have a great feeling about it, then why not go for it? You could always go back to your plan B if it doesn't pan out. Okay, so let's go to the 5th and final step. So the final step is to set a timeline with key dates. You need to give yourself deadlines so that this move will happen in real life, instead of staying in your notebook or your spreadsheet. For example, if you'll be starting a new job in the new place, your start date might determine the whole moving timeline. So in your timeline schedule, I suggest you include things like your notice period if you're leaving your existing job, the time it takes to transport your belongings, any paperwork like visas, setting up bank accounts and things like that. Include anything you can think of so you have clear deadlines to work to. Alright, so those are the 5 steps to get on your way to Geoarbitrage, which is my favourite method to speed up your path to FIRE. So if you've done those 5 steps, feel free to pat yourself on the back because you've just done a ton of work. So let's recap the 5 steps that we talked about in these past 2 episodes. So the first step is knowing your why, your main reasons for making the move. This will influence a lot of the decisions and also give you an overarching goal to aim at. The second one is doing your homework. You need to consider the important and the super important aspects we discussed. Number 3 is running the numbers to see if it works out for you financially. And number 4 is the testing phase. So this involves visiting the new place or places to get a good sense of the area. And remember, the longer your visit, the better. And the 5th and final step was to set timelines and key dates. So you have some target dates in mind so you can work towards them. If you think this episode would help a friend, please don't hesitate to share it with them. The show notes can be found at freedombeforefire.substack.com. If you have a question or want to connect, feel free to send me an email at freedombeforefire@proton.me. That's freedombeforefire@proton.me. If you found this show useful and want to be notified of future episodes, you can follow us on Spotify or Apple via the show's main page or on whatever app you're using right now. And lastly, if you've just learned one good thing that will help you in your journey and you want to help us out here, please do leave a 5-star rating on your podcast player app. If you're using Apple Podcasts, you can even leave a nice review by scrolling to the bottom of the podcast page. That would help us out loads. All right, so that's what I have for you today. Thank you very much for spending your time with me. If you do have any questions, feel free to just send me an email. Oh, and before I go, just remember, practice gratitude, live life by your design, and do things that make you smile. You got this.